Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us with what I'll call just a little bit of Hebrew as we go through Daniel chapter 9, trying to shorten these up just a little bit to maybe 15, 20 minutes to keep it a little more manageable. I think it just will please everyone to have a little shorter to listen to because most of you listen to these afterwards, and so I wanted to make it enjoyable and keep the information in kind of bite-sized chunks so that it gives us something hopefully meaningful to think about. So I'm hoping you're enjoying this new format. So as we look at verse 13, as you can see on the screen, the left side is the Bible Hub, and the right side is the JPS Hebrew scriptures that they use. And we're in the midst of this prayer of Daniel that is just somewhat fascinating and captivating me. I guess I'm searching for the right word to describe the feeling that I get as I read through this very lengthy prayer. And as we spoke last time, very repetitious and very indulgent as far as the verbiage and the just the depth of the words that Daniel goes through and seemingly repeating over and over again, and trying to get the feeling for how Daniel's spirit, I'll say, is interceding for his people, and he's including himself in it. And so, as we pick up on verse 13, I just want to read something in the Hebrew on the left side. It's Kasher Katuv B'Torat Moshe. So as it is written in the law of Moses. And what's this is telling is that, of course, this means that Daniel has a copy of the law of Moses. He has a copy of what was written, whether it was all of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We have to assume so that these writings were protected and were sheltered by Daniel here, and that he had access to them. Because remembering that they're in captivity, where did these writings go? Where did all the things of the tabernacle go? We're going to see later on that the tabernacle was not in use anymore because they were in Jerusalem, they were in Babylon. And so, how were these writings preserved? So, does Daniel have a copy there, or is he going from memory of what he had back at once upon a time? So interesting. And he speaks about, again, the evil that's come upon us because we haven't entreated the favor of the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and discernment in thy truth. And so the Lord hath watched over us and over this evil, again, ascribing this evil to coming from God and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works. So here Daniel is saying, even though this punishment is coming, or is being brought upon us, he's looking at it as justice being done. He uses the word righteous, but I think justice gives us a better frame of mind to where when we think of justice, we look at equity. We feel like this is appropriate, that the punishment is appropriate for the transgression. And I believe that's how Daniel's talking about it. And he says that we as a people have not hearkened to his voice. Again, interesting how he includes himself in this, even though Daniel, I would say for sure, didn't partake in any of these things that he's mentioning, that he had refrained from them, but yet with his alignment with his people, he's including himself. And this is, I don't know, been affecting me in my daily prayers as I think about myself, my family, my loved ones, those that maybe are not in a place with God as to where they need to be. I look at my neighbors, I look at my country and the things going on in our city and community and in our nation and the world. And how are these prayers supposed to affect us and myself in how I pray for them? We're admonished to pray for our nation. We're admonished to pray for our leaders, whether we agree with them, whether we like them. We're maybe not in a league with them. They seem so far away and so far removed. But yet here Daniel is setting a model for us. And it's just something that's given me something to think about in my morning prayers and how I construct them and how I ask for God to move in their behalf and try to put myself in a place to where maybe this is happening to me, and how to get myself more deeply involved in a spiritual realm in what's going on. And what does intercession mean? What does it mean to pray in a way that we take on and take to heart these things that are happening? And all of these things I'm picking up from Daniel's prayer, and it's affecting me. And so Daniel's saying, "O Lord, according to thy righteousness, let thy anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city, Jerusalem." So he's praying for his nation, even though he's not there. He's in Babylon, he's removed. He's still um, concerned about his countrymen, his city. Um, Let thy people and thy people are reproach. He's talking about how it looks to the rest of the world. Again, things we can relate to as in our nation as to how, we worry about how we're concerned with how we're perceived by others by the things that are happening. And so here's history repeating itself. And Daniel is feeling the same thing as to how do the other nations see Israel, and what will they think not only of Israel, but also of the God of Israel? And so Daniel's bringing this all before the Lord and saying, "Hearken unto the prayer of thy servant," speaking about himself, "and to his supplications." And then I love some of these words: "Cause thy face to shine upon the sanctuary that is desolate for the Lord's sake." Interesting how he just reminds God what this is all about. What's the big picture? Um, Obviously, God knows, but Daniel is saying it for a reason, that he's reminding God, but I think it's also that he's reminding himself, as that God's in control. There's a big picture that we struggle to identify with, and we struggle to know what God's will is in so many things, and all the troubles and all of the heartaches, all of the famines, the pestilences, the earthquakes, the volcanic activity, economic trouble. We could go on and on and on about the things that are occurring in our world today, and have to realize that God is still on the throne. God is in control. He's not caught by surprise by any of the things that happening, and that we need to look to him to make sense of this and realize that the ultimate thing is that his name is glorified and that his will is done. And so Daniel's repeating this, and finally he finishes up this portion here in verse 19. He says, O Lord, forgive. O Lord, attend and do and defer not for thine own sake, O my God, because thy name is called upon thy city and thy people. So Daniel here is not looking for any betterment for himself, for his own glory, for his own prestige. He's only thinking about the things of God. He's only thinking about what God's will is and what God's people and the relationship they have and how the world sees them, and that his name may be glorified. And again, there's just so much in here to ponder and to think about as it guides my prayers, and where my motivation and what my um, purposes during these prayers. And here, this is so cool. We get to verse 20. He says, "And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people, Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God." Another reference here that we don't often think of, the holy mountain. We assume this is Mount Sinai. It could be Mount Zion. It's another mountain, which is where the Temple Mount is sometimes referenced to being, kind of an elusive understanding of what Mount Zion really is. And while he was speaking in prayer, um, along comes Gabriel, and he describes him as a man, the one I'd seen in the beginning. And then there's some interesting verbiage here. It says, "being caused to fly swiftly." Now, this sentence here is translated very different. If we look to the left side of your screen, you'll see the Bible Hub, but showing what's called a parallel, and it takes all of the translations in English and takes this verse and shows how these different Bibles translate them. So just setting the standard for the King James, it says being caused to fly swiftly, which pretty much matches the Hebrew version, JPS version. But then when we get to other versions, it doesn't reference the flying or swiftly. It doesn't make any reference of flying because it's hard to tell who is flying. Is Daniel describing that Gabriel is flying, which would be an angelic being? Understood that this angelic being, Gabriel, could fly, but the New American Standard Version doesn't make any reference. It talks about that Gabriel came to Daniel in his extreme weariness. And we'll see that the NASB also follows that extreme weariness. The another version of NASB has extreme weariness. The Legacy Bible, extreme weariness. Amplified Bible, it says that Gabriel came to him, and here what Gabriel was, described coming to Daniel as he was extremely exhausted. This one talks about the weariness. And so you got a real difference here on um, is someone flying? Is someone coming in the weariness? So let's take a look at that. We'll scroll down to verse 20 and take a look at this word that's causing so much discussion among these translators here. And here we go. While I was speaking in the beginning, caused to fly. So it's number 3286, pronounced mu'af. And so let's open mu'af. The root is ya'a, and it is translated, could be faint, or cause to fly, or to be weary. This is interesting. And again, remember, Hebrew is a very word limited language, which means that there's many words that have dual meanings. And this word is not used very often, which of course makes it more difficult for the translators to understand what's going on. But the word itself in the Brown Driver Briggs comes from the root meaning to be weary and to faint. So where did they get fly from? Um, this is interesting. So in the topical lexicon, it says this term appears 10 times through very different settings. It talks about a area where human strength ends and divine help and divine judgment begins. And so it gives a reference here in Judges and Isaiah and Jeremiah. And so this is very interesting. So trying to think of what was happening. So it mentions here that there's a nuance that surfaces in the verse that we're reading, where Daniel is speaking about Gabriel, comes and indicates in swift flight. But it also signals fatigue. So they really are saying, okay, well, obviously it can be both. There's no reason that Gabriel couldn't um, doesn't say he had wings. Daniel said it, he describes him as a man. I don't know that I would describe a man as having wings. I would have said it looked like an angelic being or used a different terminology. There is a word for malach, which is sometimes used to describe messengers. He doesn't use that word here. So why not, instead of trying to figure out exactly what it means, let's look at both applications could apply. Daniel could have seen Gabriel move towards him, but also Gabriel could have come and brought strength to him. We know that Daniel was in extreme fatigue because he mentioned it earlier in our readings that his spirit was taken from him or grieved, and he had no strength within him. And this prayer obviously was a deep prayer from the heart. And if we think of how long it was and how involved Daniel was in this prayer, it's very easy to get an understanding that Daniel was completely exhausted from this prayer. Think of the prayer that Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. It says that he sweat like great drops of blood. Well, could Daniel have been in similar agony over his people? And maybe not to that same limit, because obviously very different, but yet some parts of it are very much the same. He's pleading for his people. He wants his people to be delivered. And I can very much understand that Daniel would be driven to almost a point of exhaustion at the end of this prayer, and that Gabriel came to him to give him strength and to encourage him. And then, as we close out just this little portion here, it says, Gabriel says to Daniel, I've come forth to help you be skillful of understanding, and that you are greatly beloved. I don't know of anything I could hear that would be more encouraging than to hear an angelic being or the voice of the Lord come and say to me that you are greatly beloved. And to hear those words, how that must have felt to Daniel. And I believe that that would have encouraged him and given him strength. And with that, I just want you to think about this, that there are numerous scriptures that tell us the same thing, and that I believe God can come to us in our moment of weakness, in our time of trouble, in our time when we feel overwhelmed, and that He can say to us, you are greatly beloved, you are greatly cared for. We have references over and over again that, God so loved the world. And I believe another way I heard it means that God so cherished us that He gave His only begotten Son. And we need this encouragement. There are times when it's vital that we hear these words. And if that's you today and whatever you're going through, I pray that God can emphasize upon your heart, upon your spirit, that you are greatly beloved, that He cherishes you, that He gave His greatest gift for you when He gave Himself for you and for I, so that we could be saved and delivered. So God bless you all. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks so much for listening, and Lord so willing, we'll see you next time. Bye bye.